cheating.
There will be problems if he does try to draft an executive order just outright banning voter ID or mandating voter ID or banning mail-in voting.
Right.
Again, elections are run by states. You can imagine the Supreme Court intervening in a relatively timely manner to try to straighten that out. But because of that, I mean, just in the way that they're trying to do with tariffs, what is the likelihood or what is the talk within the White House about trying to declare an emergency? The Washington Post is reporting about that memo. Is that something from your reporting the White House the president would seriously consider?
I have no reporting that Susie Wiles, his chief of staff or deputy chief of staff, James Blair, or others at the top echelons of the White House want to move forward with such an effort. Again, they want to focus elsewhere on actual substantive issues here.
They're not the ones in charge.
That is the issue at play. Kurt Olsen, who is the conspiracy theorist that has, was pushed forward, Fulton County, right, the criminal investigation through the FBI and Kash Patel, he is working as a special government employee. Donald Trump has him essentially as his, quote, election integrity czar. Mm-hmm. And so that is the issue here for people like Susie Wiles, is the fact that Donald Trump can turn to people like Kurt Olsen, can turn to Cleta Mitchell. If Donald Trump wants this, he can move forward. And that's where this executive order that we, along with our colleague Jake Traylor, are reporting on, is a very, tempered executive order because it's just focused on, voter ID, something that generally the public could get behind.
Is Susie Wiles being an effective catcher in the rye here? That's basically the role she's playing, trying to keep things off the president's desk, because once he sees them, once he has that conversation.
Right. Well, I'm told Steve Bannon is directly passing to a very close aide to the president, documents, articles that essentially about our past stolen elections that have been rigged and about things that he should be looking at, because this is an issue that he wants to be front and center in voters' minds, that those are the documents and articles that are making their way to the president. And we know how he operates. He simmers on these things. He posts about them, and they make their way into State of the Union addresses here. And ultimately, Kash Patel still exists at the FBI. Tulsi Gabbard still exists at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence here. So as long as Donald Trump has those types of allies in there and wants these things to move forward, there is no reason to believe that others within the White House, even the chief of staff, could stop him from moving forward and making these type of things.
Is at the DOJ. All right, Jake, how does Congress feel about potentially being circumvented yet again?
They won't like it. For a lot of reasons. Number one, let's just talk about practical, right? Republicans have been remarkably successful with mail-in balloting now for many years. You'll remember in the last Trump administration, Kevin McCarthy tried to get Trump to stop talking about ending mail-in balloting because it's an effective way to get people to vote. And Republicans, again, have done a really good job at getting people to vote by mail-in balloting over the last 3 or 4 cycles. That's number one. Number two, the effort to pass what is now called the Save America Act, this voter ID citizenship test legislation through Congress, is going nowhere. We reported this morning it's all but dead. Leadership would have to blow up the filibuster to get this through. They are not willing to do that, despite what the president says. It's a dead issue that people keep beating the drum on because they want to tighten the screws on the election process, but it's not going anywhere, and it's going to be a huge point of contention between the hardline right and the more establishment types like John Thune, who say that we're just not going to blow up the filibuster for both, ideological reasons. They're quote unquote, they view their institutional responsibilities as not blowing up the filibuster, number one. Number two, blowing up the filibuster would mean Democrats could offer endless amendments on all sorts of topics that would just need 50 votes to pass. They would be giving up control of the floor, according to the leadership, if they did that. So I think the Save America Act is dead, as I said, and I think that's going to be, again, it's going to be a big point of contention.
Rick, do these moves ultimately backfire? Donald Trump has been going back to the playbook, going back to the well over and over again with the same rhetoric, the same accusations, going back to 2020, getting into Fulton County, getting those ballots, claiming the same thing. Is it going to finally fall on deaf ears? Will people start to see this again and again and again and say, wait a minute, I don't believe it any longer, especially when you see the majority of Americans now say that they don't like the job that he's doing. They don't like the work he's done on the economy. They don't like the way he's handling deportations. They don't like the tariffs. They don't like the graft. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Look, I think Donald Trump has run out the thread on the greatest hits collection, and this is one of the greatest hits. But, you know, you've got, as mentioned, Kirk Olsen and Cleta Mitchell and Heather Honey and Marcy McCarthy and all these other election deniers who in 2020 made this same case and took it to court after court after court and got shut down everywhere they went, not because of the deep state, but because what they brought were fake allegations. And you know, if Trump bases this fake emergency on fake allegations about a fake voter fraud crisis, I think most voters will understand that he's just in a situation of political desperation. He's pinned down with the burdens of his own failures as a president. The tariffs, the economy is not working out for most Americans. Health insurance costs are going up like crazy. And the Epstein matter is hovering over Donald Trump. And there's no amount of emergency declarations that makes any of that better for Republican candidates. You know, you are driving a quicker wedge, I think, in the normie Republican world of the John Thune types, the Lisa Murkowski types, by insisting on the SAVE Act at first, and now saying, okay, if I can't get what I want, if you won't take this absurd act I want you to take on the SAVE Act, then I'm going to do something 10 times worse and make a lot more noise and put us in a much worse legal position. And I think in some ways, Katie, one of the things that's in the minds of some Republicans right now is they thought they were super clever about redistricting Texas this year. They thought that was going to be a great political power move. And this is the same kind of too clever by half maneuver that has ended up blowing up on them in Texas and may blow up on them even if they do implement this voter ID executive order.
Yeah. So, Nina, on that point, on the overconfidence, the hubris that might be at play here, and remember, this is a Congress that has a one-seat majority right now. They are barely hanging on. It's a Senate that was thought to never be in play, but now might be in play. Donald Trump, yes, won all the swing states, but he didn't win by giant margins across the country. It was close. Lots of people voted for both sides, more for him this time, but lots of people voted for both sides. And again, these polling numbers, is there an element of hubris here?
Very much so, Katie, but this president doesn't care. This is all about him. It's the me, and more me. And he doesn't care what he has to burn down to get there. How can President Donald J. Trump go from the law and order president to the if I'm not cheating, I'm not trying president? And that's what this is coming down to. It is patently wild that he won in 2024, and the song that he's singing is that there is massive, rampant voter fraud in the United States of America when he knows that that is not the case. The people around him know that that is not the case. Countless groups who specialize in researching this from the left and the right have made it very clear that this is not the case. And if and when there is ever voting fraud, no matter how numerically rare it is, there are laws in place on the state level where there are consequences and repercussions for anybody that tries to participate in voting fraud. But Katie, that is not good enough for this president. This is wild. He is having a temper tantrum, and he doesn't care that this temper tantrum is, in fact, impacting the American people, taking one of the rare civic rights and responsibilities that Americans have to participate. He wants to thwart them from participating. If anybody should be concerned about voter fraud, it should be coming from him. I'm old enough to remember that when he asked the Georgia Attorney General, find me over 11,000 votes. The president needs to get a grip on reality and stop playing these kinds of games. If Republicans believe that their ideas are the best ideas, then compete straight up. But to try to cheat your way through and take away the right of voters to be able to choose their politicians, it's wild, it's undemocratic, and it is a slap in the face to the American people.
I'm going to steal some time from the rest of the show here because I have one more question I want to ask Rick. In talking about voter ID, the majority of Americans think voter ID is fine, and that includes Democrats.
Sure.
Is it a bad idea? And I know there's no fraud. It is a solution in search of a problem. Yes, all of that is true. Is it a bad idea for Democrats to say, okay, you want voter ID? Fine, have voter ID.
Look, most states already require some form of voter ID. And Democrats, if they accept the predicate of voter ID, then it becomes the passport, and then it becomes the birth certificate. Then it becomes women who change their name have to go 7 extra steps. Then it becomes an additional set of costs, a poll tax almost in some of these cases. But here's the thing, Katie. if you look at the spectrum of most important problems in this country, and you had a list of 100 most important problems, voter ID would be number 799. It is not a thing that is going to give the Republicans a political advantage in the coming election. It's not going to fix their problem about Trump's ratings on the economy. Trump is a weak president who's done a bad job. They can't fix that by demanding voter ID. And I think Democrats accepting that predicate without a secondary discussion about how deeply expensive and harmful it is to a lot of people who don't have all that ID, a passport, for instance. I think that is just a political trap that they would fall in. I'd recommend they go back to pointing out Trump's failures on the economy, where he is truly and desperately weak.